Hola, ¿cómo están? And what is going on, guys? DarkScheme here, bringing you an open discussion that at the moment I am still trying to figure out as well. And that discussion is map voting in Halo 5. So for those who play Halo 5, you know that each map that is picked in Halo 5, you have to play no matter what. There is no map voting at all, and the map rotation will always be different. Now there are some few pros for having map voting like this, or I guess I should say not having map voting whatsoever, but there are also some cons as well. One of the few that we have to look at that's good about this is that the unpopular game types that might be somebody's favorite will still be played no matter what, but the cons of this is that you might have to play a map 2 times in a row or a game type 2 times in a row because there is no real game lobby that you can stick to with players. The system doesn't really know whether you've played this map or not, and most of the time I believe playing the same map is a little bit more common because of this. Now, I am also speaking out of the knowledge and experience that I've seen playing in the Arena playlist, so I don't actually know how the system works, but I imagine it works something like that. And if anything, it would probably work in some sort of way in which it would figure out if most players in the lobby already played a certain map. So with that said, because there is no real map voting, it's kind of just on a map rotation, it means that for the majority of the times that you're going to play the game, you might get stuck with a game type that you're not very fond of or a map that you're not very fond of. Now, I say this because the newest maps that we've gotten for Halo 5 have not really been received very well, and I think I would include myself in that. Some of the maps are kind of just weird, and don't get me wrong, some of the maps are good for different game types. For free-for-all, Overgrowth is actually not that bad of a map, and Riptide for free-for-all, I think I've played once or twice in my experience for free-for-all. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't the best either. And I think one of the things about not having map voting and only keeping it to a map rotation means that you're not really going to get as much data on which game types and game modes are being skipped and which ones are the favorites. At the moment, the only thing we have to go off of is how many pro players complain about having certain maps and game types in a certain playlist. I think the biggest gripe for maps and game types right now is in the Team Arena playlist, in which you are stuck with playing games that are not official Halo Championship Series game types. And I think that is one of the things that the pro players want and the reasons why they complain, or really just give feedback about these maps because they aren't really set in stone. I think one of the biggest is that Assault game mode, even though it isn't official, and I feel like they are definitely experimenting to see how well Assault plays in a 4v4 playlist, but without any real testing, any real knowledge of Assault, at the moment it's just going to be frustrating. And for the most part, people still have the option of dashboarding, meaning they can close out of their Halo 5 application without any real D rank going into the game. And while this isn't completely all negative, there are definitely some good things about map rotation. You get to play those game types that you don't really ever play because others would prefer something else. Talking about map voting, I believe map voting wouldn't be that great. Most of the people would probably skip out over a bunch of different maps that are actually fan favorites, and for the most part, it would deem playing in a party even better. Because you'll be playing in a party, you will have, for the most part, the map voting advantage. So map voting isn't really the answer for me. If we were to have a different option instead of having a set map rotation, I think vetoing system similar to Halo 3 would be great. One of the reasons why this is great, and I think Reddit has pretty much been talking about this for a few hours now, is that the vetoing system gives them information, gives them data on what maps and game types are being skipped out and which ones are being played. Now, of course, that isn't always the best data, as skipping the first map and then having the second map and game type be set will always be 50-50. But for the most part, personally, I think a lot of the game types that would be skipped would be any game types on the maps Riptide, Overgrowth, and Torque. Unfortunately, those new maps are just not working well in the Halo 5 playlist at the moment. It might be working well for other game types, but as far as competitive game types, it just isn't there. And this isn't to say that the map can't be fixed, because with this data, with the knowledge that these maps are being skipped and not played, or that it is not everybody's favorite, it would force 343 to look into the maps, see what isn't working, see what is working on the map, test it a little bit more, and hopefully get a few fixes for the map. I believe they have the power to change things on the map, ultimately changing it for what it is now to something better, not only in power weapon layouts, but adding in different things into the game that would create a different map route and hopefully make the maps flow better for all these different game types. Like I said, as it is now, in the Team Arena playlist, I think that is a big deal, and I am specifically only talking about the Team Arena playlist. Now, if I were to be talking for other playlists, I believe Riptide wouldn't be that bad on Free-For-All. Overgrowth wouldn't be that bad on Free-For-All either. And talking Torque, I think it might be a little too big for Free-For-All. So these maps definitely work for certain game types, but not just the competitive ones. And because they aren't really working for these competitive game types, I feel like the competitive community is voicing their opinion on these maps and game modes. And unfortunately, I don't think making another whole playlist for these maps would work. It would definitely help out having an experimental playlist in which people could test out future game modes, future updates, things that would be possible within the future of competitive Halo for a playlist that would work, but you would still need map vetoing for these set playlists. Having vetoing for certain playlists I think would be great, and having a map rotation for an experimental playlist would be great as well. So having a whole vetoing system would be good for only a certain amount of playlists. I think if you continue to give people the veto option for everything, might make it so that the community gets too invested in skipping the first map no matter what it is, and maybe getting some false data. That is just me thinking out loud. Like I said, I'm still thinking about this, and this is definitely an open discussion. I don't really have a strong opinion on either side, but I do definitely hope that this overall enhances and creates a better Halo 5 experience for everybody, as map rotation and forcing people to play on certain maps and game types is starting to hinder those who are trying to get a good experience for Halo 5. It might be looking like a group would have an advantage over having map vetoing, but at the same time, it might also be good to have and test out the vetoing system within Halo 5. I think experimenting with the community should be good. For the most part, I know that testing things with the community in an open environment might not always look great because things aren't working 100%, but they are being tested. But overall, I think it'd be a great experience to see how well things would work out and overall get a better idea of what works and what doesn't. But that is pretty much it for me today, guys. Hopefully you guys can add on a little bit to this discussion. Let me know if I missed a few things about map rotations and a vetoing system. I'd greatly like to discuss this with you guys and get a little bit of a better idea on what could work with Halo 5 and maybe what can be an experimental process for all of this as well. I'll leave you guys with that, and as always, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.